in the dark, I play my dreams. Permaculture flows like sweet streams. I'm the daddy with the know-how seed. Creating the world like it's meant to be. Permaculture, P-I-M-P, I'm the king. Wrapping love in everything. Bringing change, making it last. Join the permaculture.
Welcome to episode 422 of the Permaculture Pimpcast, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is My Passion. The only pimpcast on planet Earth where we discuss permaculture, preparedness, practical living, and lately prostitutes.
Permaculture, P-I-M-P, with soulful rays. In the VIP scans where we find our place.
Oh, good to be here with y'all. Hopefully the music is coming through this time. Folks, I was just talking to my guest a moment ago about all of the weird attacks that we're having. You name it, whether it's banking, whether it's good night. I mean, they were messing with our music. I mean, it's all these little weird things that seem to not only be happening with us, but anybody who's speaking truth to power in this space. So pray for us and, pray that whatever that no weapon formed against us will prosper at the bottom line. Okay. All right, y'all. This program brought to you by, I shouldn't have said program because we are not programming you. This episode brought to you by Sovereign Health Summit. That's going to be October 27th through the 31st in Harmony, North Carolina. Going to be a massive crowd out there. We're going to have at least 5,000 to 6,000 on the ground and upward of maybe 150,000 online. So if you want to get in, if you want to be there live, if you need tickets, whether it's going to be in the online thing or whether it's going to be in person, you can get 5% off with TPC, Tango Papa Charlie. Also, Nessa's Hemp, 10% off with promo code PERMA. I'm going to have to find a way to get that episode onto YouTube where we were talking to Nessa and you talk about another person that's experiencing some serious blowback because she actually has a CBD product, CBDA, that will absolutely knock your socks off. I've been using it for a year and a half now before I even had her on the program. So definitely check it out. Perma will get you 10% off. And then finally, My Chronic Silver. Not the Chronic of the Snoop Dogg album, but My Chronic Silver. And folks, I'm telling you, that stuff is it's better than the nano stuff. It's better than everything else out there. I use it all the time. And we even use it on our animals from time to time when they get injured. So 10% off with promo code with that. I think we're going to have a different promo code later on tonight. All right, check it out, folks. I'm not going to mess around. I handled all the housekeeping up front because one of my guests gets going on here. I'm telling you what, she burned the whole place down last time in a good way, and I can't believe I didn't have her on before now. So the combat midwife herself, man, I of all the names out there, Jessica, I think, honestly, and I've told you that before, I even told my wife the other day, there's something about that has a ring to it that you're like, combat midwife. Okay. Don't quite know what that is, but I want to know what it is. So, every superhero has an origin story. For the people that don't know who you are, why don't you tell everybody about yours?
Billy, thank you so much for having me back. We had such a great conversation last time, so I'm happy for us to be able to chat again. It is a cool name. I wish I could take credit for it. I did not come up with it. My military guys that have been training for years, they started calling me that. It's stuck, and now everybody just refers to me as that. And so I've now built a brand and a business on that. And while it has expanded and turned into much more than what it originally started as, which was just a cool name of bridging the two backgrounds that I have, which is combat medicine and being a midwife together, and made an awesome mashup, it's now become so much more, which is really cool.
Shoot, I got myself. Okay, that wasn't a technical snafu, except it was on me. So, give everybody a little bit about your background. We won't go into your, your checkered past or anything like that. But,
Sure.
As I understand it, you're a midwife, a paramedic, battlefield-born educator who's trained over 100,000 combat medics, including some of the guys I would know in special operations. Why don't you give us a little background on your background, because I think this is really going to be a hit for a lot of folks out there.
Yeah, so I am a paramedic and a midwife, and I've worked in the field, delivering babies as a midwife, but I have also worked as a paramedic. And many moons ago, when we started dallying in the Middle East. We were sending more soldiers off to war than we had to train them. And so the Army reached out to me and said, hey, can you teach our combat medics? And I've had a rule since the beginning of time, and that is never say no to an interview or never say no to a meeting, because you just don't know what type of relationship you'll cultivate in that time frame. So I went to the meeting, got hired on the spot, and for years I worked training the combat medics. That turned into me moving on to teach the flight medics, and then I moved on to special warfare. So that's kind of my background. And then I've also taught EMS and midwifery in the civilian world. So I kind of dabble in two different worlds, and we found, by we, I mean me, I kind of found out that there's a big gap in education, specifically relating to women and children. I think it's really sexy cool to talk about tourniquets and hemostatic dressings and occlusive dressings, just like anybody else that loves medicine. That is really sexy, and there's super fun pieces of equipment to work with. But what's really cool is being able to take care of patients long term. So we call that in the medical world prolonged field care, but being able to take care of people that have issues for a long period of time when help is not available. So I recognized that training was really lacking in both the civilian world in medicine and in the military medicine when it came to women and children. And women and children are the most vulnerable when any sort of system collapses. So whether that's war, famine, whatever the heck's going on in Gaza, Syria, or our own backyard. So a fire, a hurricane, an earthquake. If we can't get to help, we need to be able to take care of ourselves. And women and children are the very first to be marginalized and the very first to be at risk. And our bodies are different than men. And so I found out that there's a big gap in education. And so this is why I work in the field that I do, which is teaching everyday people how to take care of the most vulnerable in their family, their wife, their daughter, their mom, the neighbor lady next door, and be prepared to take care of those people.
Well, this is getting real in a big way. And a little housekeeping note, folks, if you're just coming in right now in the chat, if you got any questions, make sure you put them in capital letters, because it's hard for me to read anything with these birth control glasses on or these blue light blockers. It's hard for me to read anything. So if you do have any questions, make sure you put them in the chat, and also hit that thumbs up and tell everybody we're live, because this is one that everybody needs to hear. Now, I couldn't have had you on at a better time, Jessica, because, I mean, for a lot of people, I had no idea how many people have just completely checked out to what's going on in the world. But folks, you're going to have to check back in, because Israel just blew up the biggest natural gas refining station in Iran, and Iran has said, okay, don't start no SH and there won't be no IT, but since you brought the SH, we're going to bring the IT tomorrow,
right,
and we're going to wipe out everybody else's natural gas. Folks, in a nutshell, what I'm telling you right now, there is a reason why I've been doing these kinds of shows as of late. Had on Nessa's Hemp, I'm having on a bunch of other people, because I saw this coming. I've been talking about it for the longest time, and here it is. It's right at our door, but by and large, most people in the United States of amnesia are not going to pay attention until they literally see the problem in the grocery store or at their front door. Now, I said all that to say this. It couldn't be more apropos for you to be on this program at a time in America where, with just those two things I spoke about a moment ago, not even counting the things not coming in or out of the Strait of Hormuz, right, all the sulfuric acid, it's not coming this way. So now all of a sudden, what you said about children and women being, especially pregnant mothers, being marginalized, especially in the combat zone, folks, that's where we might wind up being if before too long, if they don't get things ironed out. And judging by what I'm seeing, it ain't happening anytime soon. So Jessica, throwing it back to you to say, in these areas where we don't know what kind of America we're going to be looking at a month, 6 months, even a year from now, how can families prepare for an unexpected birth or OB emergencies, especially off-grid or without power? Because when that hurricane or manufactured hurricane hit Western North Carolina, I don't even want to start thinking about what they did when they didn't have power or access to hospitals. So, yeah, can you run with that one?
Yeah, so it is really difficult for people to look at what's happening in the world and and apply it to their daily lives, right? Because that's happening over there. It's not happening here, and we are humans, and so we're trying to pay rent, mortgage, a car payment, put food on the table. That's very overwhelming. It's overwhelming for me, right? And I live in this space daily, right? I'm training military personnel. I'm working with EMS, working with like I'm working in this space all the time, and it is very difficult for me to process what's happening that in a different country on a different side of the world. So let's just kind of turn it down and look at it more microscopically on what's happening here in the United States. So women and children are being marginalized in a few different ways. One, we have humongous obstetric deserts in the United States. So what does that mean? That means that there are no obstetric providers, no OBs, no midwives. There's nothing in that area. And you can look this up yourself. You can go on a map and just look up OB desert map on the internet. It's being talked about all over the place. I've done several posts about it on social media because this is a real thing that we are really dealing with. There's nobody to care for these women. So that's one problem. The other problem is our country is prime real estate for natural disasters, right? For a plethora of reasons. One, we can just talk about it geography wise, but two, also we've got a lot of manufactured things going on. You brought up what happened in North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee. Florida is at risk, Texas is at risk. And then also things like earthquakes, fires that happen on the mountainous regions of the United States. So those actually affect us. And then we have to look at what's going to be happening in about 6 to 9 to 12 months from now, because yes, while the Strait of Hormuz is a blockade and a big problem, the trickle down effect of that won't happen for about 6 to 12 months from now. And so that's really far away for people who are just trying to survive. I don't know about you, but every time I go to the grocery store, I freak out. It's really, really hard for me to pay for groceries and take care of myself simply because every time I go, everything is way more expensive. So it's very difficult to look at the bigger picture. So just whittling it down and thinking about what's happening to us here in the United States, and then we can deal with what's going to happen in about a year from now. But all of that to paint a picture of you really can't take care of yourself if you don't have the proper tools and the proper education. So whether that's learning how to garden, right? That's your arena, or learning how to apply different energy sources to your house, being able to take care of your family medically is a skill that has completely died out in most of our culture. Most of the time we didn't go to the hospital, we didn't go to the doctor when we had a bump, a scrape, an infection, a weird thing going on. It was really rare for that to happen, but we've created this environment. Well, we didn't create it, the Rockefellers did, to be able to just say, hey, you need to rely on somebody else to take care of you. And I don't want people to feel that way. I want them to feel empowered, be able to take care of themselves, and have the resources. So coming to one of my workshops would be amazing. It's an all-day workshop where I teach you how to take care of women and children. Like, do you know what to do with a 3-month-old who's dehydrated? Do you know how to use some very basic skills and equipment and items that you probably have in your kitchen right now to take care of your wife if she had a yeast infection and there was no such thing as Walmart or Walgreens? I can teach you how to do that, and I want to be able to do that for people. And then the other thing is I've already created a really awesome kit for people who want to be prepared for in case they have an emergency birth outside of the hospital. And that just takes all of the guesswork of what exactly do I need. And I created that for my soldiers. They were going on this very specific mission, and I whittled down to my must-have items, and I put it in a kit for them.
Okay, before we move on, because I got a number of other things clearly I'm going to ask you,
Sure.
where do people, for the ones that are going to have to drop off early, and we'll come back, we'll circle back to it, but where do they go to get this training from you? Is it at your website, and how do they make that happen?
Yeah, so you can go to combatmidwife.com, and we have an awesome class coming up, and two in June, or the next classes are going to be in June. So one is in Tennessee, with Nicole Sauce at the Holler, and that will be on the 13th. And then I will also be at the Ranch in Texas, which is in San Antonio, and that's really cool. It's at the largest shooting range, indoor outdoor shooting range in the whole nation. So I partnered up with them. It's really great. But it's an all-day class. It's 8 hours, very hands-on. I bring my mannequins. We have a great time.
Now, do you have any classes that, for the people that can't get away, or do you have any classes or online content that people can access?
Not at this moment, and there's a couple of reasons why. Because the class is so hands-on based, it would be
Mhm.
really, really difficult for you to teach somebody how to be really awesome at permaculture without being able to hang out with them. There's a lot you could teach them online, I'm sure, right? But being able to actually learn about the plants, touch and feel. There's a lot that goes into that. And so it's really difficult for me to teach you how to deliver a breech baby without you actually putting hands on a mannequin and doing all of the skills and all of the tasks. So not at this current moment in time. However, we are working on that. The team is frantically working on that. I'm hoping that that's a later this year, early next year solution. But we don't know where our life will be then. And so I'd really love to see people make the trip to come out and hang out with me. People have no problem buying tickets to go see the awesome new release of someone's album. And those people do nothing for you, right? Like, you're not going to learn anything from them, and but you're going to drop hundreds of dollars to go get front row seats and hang out with some person, because they dropped a really cool album. I'm giving you skills that will last a lifetime, and you'll be able to pass on to your family. I can't be everywhere in the nation and deliver everyone's baby. So this is my way of giving back to the community, but it's also my way of passing the torch. I won't be on this planet forever, and it's my job to pass on these skills.
That's what I'm talking about. I mean, as I asked the question, I was like, man, I never did a CPR course online. So, I
No,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there are certain things, like, and you're absolutely right. It's certain skills, some things you could do online, but the things that you're talking about, obviously, you're going to want a pro right there over your shoulder.
Yeah.
I'm going to swing back to this. We'll come back. We'll come back to that in a minute regarding
Sure.
the classes you got coming up. But I remember back when my son was born, I was a soldier at the time. I was as ill prepared
Right.
as anybody could ever hope to be. So what advice do you have for dads or partners out there who feel helpless, as I did? And what do you tell them, and how do you get them more prepared for, for when it comes to birth?
Right. So this class was specifically made for soldiers. Um, so if I could take somebody who's, got a chip on their shoulder and thinks that they don't need to learn this stuff because they just need to be able to throw grenades and carry their weapon, and do cool guy shit, which I love cool guy shit. We all do. But if I can take those guys and help them out and make them feel more comfortable, then absolutely anyone can take these classes. But I would also say that getting rid of fear and identifying A, what your fear is, B, where does it come from, and C, is there a solution? And so we'll just pick something. This is a very common phrase that people will get worried about, or a condition that people will get worried about. And they'll say, but I'm just so worried that the cord will be wrapped around their neck. What do I do for that? So that's a manufactured fear that hospitals and physicians have come up with. It's not something to be worried about. More than 40% of babies are born with a cord wrapped around their neck. So it's a variation in normal. Just like my nose is a different shape than your nose, my nose works just as well as yours does. So they're just a variation in shape, size, condition, skin color, etc. Right? But they both work. So the cord wrapped around the neck is not something to be worried about. You just slip it over their head, catch a baby, and you move on with your life. So it's a manufactured fear that hospitals and doctors want you to be fearful of, because they don't want us to feel perfectly and wonderfully made. They don't want us to believe in a higher power that created us, and they want us to be dependent on them. They do not want people who are self-sufficient and can take care of themselves. So identifying what that is, and then C, right, where does that fear come from, but C, what are the solutions? And the solution is we just learn the techniques to remove the cord and proceed with the delivery of the baby. You'll be fine.
Man, it freaks me out, because when I think back when William was born, I remember just feeling so, I mean, Michelle's going through this and I had zero in terms of the classes. It was a bizarre thing. And I just remember being so freaked out when it was all said and done. And I remember them asking, do you want to cut the cord? And I was being a wise guy. And I said, what is that, like 10% off? I mean, what do you mean, do I want to cut the cord? No, man, just wipe them off. I mean, I was just so flipping clueless because I was so ignorant about what to expect.
Sure.
And so I'm sure you could help, a guy like me and a number of others that are almost certainly like me, to get through that hurdle. But man, I just remember that being one of those odd things where I never felt more helpless in my life.
Right, but I don't want you to feel helpless, right? I want you to feel empowered. I want you to be physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually empowered. Birth is the culmination of the marital bed, right? It is the other half of the relationship. So we partook in marital relations and created a whole new life. So us being separated emotionally, mentally, spiritually during birth is detrimental to the progression of family. That they want us to be spiritually separated from each other. This war between men and women is manufactured specifically so it can fracture the family. My job and my goal is to bring those units together, not only because we need to be prepared for whatever happens, but because it's a spiritual warfare. It's a battle between good and evil. And that good and evil is really starts at birth, right? If you think about what came to this planet to protect us from evil was Christ, and he came through as a baby. And it's all about bringing those two units, those two parents together to protect, provide, and nurture a whole new life. And if you've got men over here that think all that women stuff is just weird and mysterious magic, and you've got women over here that are like, why are you not providing, protecting for me emotionally, spiritually, mentally? We have a disconnect. We have two people that went through a spiritual event separated. And that is not holy, and that is not what we're supposed to do as families. And so I want to be able to just break that barrier. So yeah, there's a huge portion of it is we need to be able to take care of people because bad things are happening in the world. But we also need to be able to take care of our loved ones and our wives and our daughters because it's a spiritual battle. There's something much more at stake here, and that is the sanctity of life. And we need to battle that at ground zero, which is really conception, but I would say we could say the birth of the baby.
Well, that's certainly another. I mean, I can honestly say I never even. Man, I have deep thoughts about a lot of things as I'm out, working on the farm and doing this and that. But I'm telling you what, you're giving me a whole lot to think of because it's never really fallen into my lap to think about it in that way. So thank you for that. Is there a benefit at all to understanding a woman's cycle when it comes to responding to certain emergencies?
Absolutely. So, in fact, the very first thing we jump into in the workshop is talking about a woman's cycle and understanding that humans in general work on a 24-hour cycle hormonally. And when we say the word hormones, we instantaneously think sex and reproductive hormones. But remember, there's insulin and a bunch of other hormones that run through our body. Hormones are just they're keys. They unlock organs' potential to do their job. And so there's a bunch of organs running or hormones running through our body, pardon me, that tell our organs how to function and function appropriately. So that's called the endocrine system. And part of that is our reproductive hormones. So that's everything from estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone. And we break all of that down so we understand how to time things appropriately, right? Again, the marital bed, how to time those things appropriately. Should we need to be preventing pregnancy because the world is crazy and we need to be protecting those that we can care for, or because we're trying to welcome in a new life, or just simply because when I'm in my follicular phase versus my luteal phase, my body physically works differently. So when I'm doing things like menstruating and ripening an egg versus having an egg be ready to be fertilized and or dying off and shedding the lining, my physical human body works differently. I could take actual side-by-side video of me lifting weights, and when I'm in my follicular phase, watch the heck out, right? I can bench more, I can lift more, I can dead weight. My body's going to work better. But when I'm in my, my luteal phase, my body's jello. I bump into walls more. I drop things more. I'm just not going to be able to work physically in my human body the same way. And there's a reason for that. So we break those down and we talk about the preservation of just how to take care of your wife, your daughter, your loved ones in your family. So you can talk about things like bugging in versus bugging out, how to have the right homeopathic herbal remedies, medications to take care of those things. We talk about things like, how do you actually take care of a woman who's menstruating and the world has shut down? If I don't have toilets, if I don't have hygiene, right? If I don't have the right way to take care of them, the last thing you want is a vaginal infection when there's no running water.
Yeah, that would be a problem. In fact, I've always wondered how they're dealing with that right now with so many women in the field. That wasn't a thing back when I was active duty. So
yes, that is a huge problem. In fact, there's entire classes about that, and it became a really big problem when I started working with the military, and that's what planted the seeds for creating these classes and creating this education, was because, now we have a whole bunch of women who are overseas, who are deployed, and they have no access to running water. Well, no wonder we have a rampant issue with infections.
So back to your course, I mean, there are a number of training courses out there. What makes yours, and I think this is almost a rhetorical question at this point, but I want you to kind of maybe put an exclamation on it. What makes yours so much different from the other OB or emergency prep courses out there?
Well, no one's teaching what I'm teaching. No one is talking about austere, grid down, no resource medicine in a field setting like I am. There isn't another class. So that's one special thing. And there's also no one that has my background that's teaching this. So I not only am a paramedic, not only am I a midwife, but I've been teaching military for a really long time. And I've worked in really horrible situations, such as natural disaster response, and I've worked in Afghan refugee camps. So I've seen what happens to women and children when there are no resources. The average response time during Hurricane Katrina for an ambulance was 14 hours. So I'm going to say that again. The average response time for an ambulance during and post Hurricane Katrina was 14 hours. Your family doesn't have 14 hours when there's an emergency, which means you need to be able to know how to take care of your family when no help is coming. So what's your plan?
Wow. That definitely sounds like something to consider in a big way. So you talked about a kit. I mean, are these kits available at your website? I mean, do you sell these kits? Now, what's in these? And then should every family consider getting one of these? I mean, right now, I mean, we don't plan on having any kids around here, but should everybody have one?
Yeah, so you're right. There are going to be some families out there and that don't plan on having any more children. And I would say that it's still an awesome thing to have on the shelf because you could use it as barter material, right?
Hmm.
You could also use it as in case somebody comes waddling on to your property. And that can be really beneficial in those situations. During World War II, there was an entire organization that had to be created for all of the abandoned infants and children.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So there were tons of children and infants being abandoned. Now, a lot of that was because probably their parents died in an air raid, right? And so these children are just waddling onto the street, and someone wonderful is picking them up and then leaving them at the hospital or the church. Okay, but a lot of times families were so strapped, they had no food, there's no more rations, there's no more anything, they don't know what to do, and they were just dropping these children off at churches and at hospitals and clinics or the family doctor. So being able to have an access to that material is super important, but also just because you never know what's going to happen, right? You never know if you're going to have another. Just because you say you don't want anymore doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to have any more. And it doesn't mean that your children aren't going to get married or your children aren't going to be in a partnership that really, results in a child. So being prepared like that is also super important. So what's in the kit? It's the bare minimum of what you need to basically survive kind of a stay and play situation. So someone's gone into labor and you need to have all of the items. So it's everything from cutting cord to clamping cord to postpartum hemorrhage. I have herbal medications that are in there to treat postpartum hemorrhage. There's even a birth certificate with ink printers so you can put baby's feet and then mommy's thumbs because there's no records, right? If the grid is down, there's no way to record anything. So that's really important. Let's see what else. Pads, diapers, swaddle, hat, measuring tape, everything you would need to be able to take care of a birth in a grid down, stay and play type of situation. All comes in a really nice ammo can so you can, that it's at least humid proof, right? In case you don't want things to get wet in there. So it can sit on your shelf and nothing should really go. You have many, many years before something would fit in the expired range. And I picked items that even if they were expired, the likelihood of them not working outside of that realm would be your discretion, right? You could just decide what is risky for you. So I picked items that are important, but could also stand the test of time, if that makes sense. I think I answered all your questions.
Yeah, I'm throwing a lot at you.
Yeah.
I got so many more. I want to kind of take a different tact here. I know you to be rather agile in conversation. So, hey, folks, we could be talking about aliens. We could be talking about false flags. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
Jessica can handle all of the above. So I'm going to kind of hit you with one that's. I would love to get your opinion on it. Let me set it up this way. There are a number of people that I personally know of that have struggled maintaining a pregnancy. And I'm talking like miscarriages on another level, like nothing I've ever seen before. I mean, people that I personally know, they haven't been jabbed. Maybe a couple of them have, but these are people that have been as fertile historically as the Tennessee Valley. And then all of a sudden,
Sorry, I laughed.
No. I mean, they have been. And then all of a sudden they seem to have miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. Do you have any idea as to why this might be happening? And it seems to be epidemic, but you're the pro. I wonder if you're seeing what I'm seeing.
Okay. That's a multifaceted problem. And I'm going to be speaking very generalized right here. So if this does not apply to you, please don't take it personally, because child loss is a very touchy subject and we want to handle it with the utmost respect possible. And fertility issues is very sensitive. So again, if none of this applies to you, please don't think that I'm speaking down to you in any way, shape, or form. Just disregard. Okay, so yes, it could be. Gosh, there's a lot of things. So you hit on the jab there first. So yeah, there could be a history of vaccinations. However, we remember we've got all those childhood jabs that we've been getting. So yes, while the most recent one was super duper scary, there's a ton of things that we've been given throughout our whole life. The other thing is our water is poison. You know, our food is not great. Our soil is depleted. That's your whole spiel, right? Is bringing back the soil. That's huge. And then there's toxins around us. We're being sprayed constantly. I would recommend anyone who is struggling with infertility, who truly has it on their heart to have another child or a child, to contact me. I have a whole virtual midwifery program. But the other thing is I would work in conjunction with a functional medicine, because we need to get down to the very cellular level of why. And here's why I'm saying that. Women are perfectly and wonderfully made to get pregnant, carry a child, and feed them for years from their breasts. That is legitimately not our sole purpose of being on this planet, but it is what we do, right? You guys do man things, and that's our realm. We do that. That's us. And so we should be able to do that. So inability to produce offspring is something that should be very concerning. And not just because there's the strong desire and want to have a child, but because that tells me your body is not working. There's something wrong on a very cellular level, and we would need to get to the bottom of that. So things like yeast overgrowth, so candida, parasite overgrowth, heavy metals would probably be my first thing to look at with those patients. And that's where blood testing comes in, and not the junk that your OB is going to do when you go in for an exam. They're going to be like, do you have good hemoglobin and hematocrit, and do you have enough white blood cells? And they're going to kick you out the door. And yeah, sure, maybe you might have a really cool OB that just says, let's look at your thyroid, but that's such an idiotic test to do if we're dealing with any type of fertility issues. That's just idiotic. It's not full spectrum. It's not looking at what's going on. I would want to know what's happening on a very microscopic cell, like what is happening in your cells? Why is this not working? Because it should.
Wow, that seems I mean, I know that was going to be a loaded question because we're being so toxined out. And, you know, I'm sitting in here in this sauna every single day because Dr. Ed Group was talking about, you know, the most effective way to remove toxins from yourself is to sweat profusely. And, you know, I'm wondering how we have any, it's just remarkable to me that we have anything left in terms of life on this planet when you consider the toxicity. You mentioned it a moment ago from the air every single day. They're dumping it worse now than it's ever been in my whole life. I mean, I've been around a while, 55 years, and I've never seen it as bad as it is right now. The water, even coming out of our well, we have to purify it here. So it's like, I mean, what do you do to escape it? I mean, I was just 2 weeks in El Salvador, didn't see a single chemtrail the whole time. So you're not telling me this is a worldwide thing. I mean, we are definitely special here in the United States of Amnesia, but I won't go sideways on that. I'm going to hit you with another thing that is, like I said, folks, I mean, if you ever talk to her, you realize she's quite agile in conversation. I know that I'm not going to catch you flat-footed on any of this stuff. So, and this is one, because we are live on YouTube, I'm going to have to find a clever way of asking you this question.
Okay. I'll do my, yeah, I'm, as you notice, I've been stumbling over my words a lot because I'm picking things to say that are going to be honoring your space. So I don't typically have this problem speaking, but I'm being very, very careful about what I say on your platform.
I knew you'd be able to do that, but typically an interview like this, I typically do on Rumble, because we can say anything we want, and I don't have to worry about, did I phrase it the right way? Did I use a forbidden word?
I know.
But this topic is too darn important to not let as many people as possible to hear it. So
thank you.
I'm going to ask you straight up.
Okay.
It blew my mind that, and I didn't even know this, that they're giving newborns Hep B vaccines and all kinds of crazy stuff. Now, where do you stand? And I'm going to have to be careful about this. Where do you stand on jabbing a baby?
So the slang term is called eyes and thighs, if you want to use that, so we don't get flagged.
Okay.
Meaning things that go in the thigh and things that go in the eye. That if that's more helpful, so we don't get flagged on this topic.
Sure.
So the I don't believe that babies should get any of those things after they're born. And the reason is biology, physiology, spiritually, and a whole bunch of other things. But babies are perfectly and wonderfully made. They come with all of the equipment. They're like Barbie. They come with all of their accessories. They don't need anything. You know, their penis is fine. It doesn't need to be amputated. Their immune system is fine. It doesn't need to be altered with genetically modified stuff. They don't need the goop in the eyes, which is called erythromycin. It's an antibiotic. And so we need to ask, why are we doing those things? And we're doing those things because we're trying to sell stuff and upcharge moms and dads. It is not because of health. So the stuff in the eyes, erythromycin, is because they're assuming that every mom that comes into the hospital to deliver a baby has chlamydia or gonorrhea. Okay. The funny thing is that you have to do an OB panel upon admission. So in an OB panel is an STD panel. And so you would be testing for chlamydia and gonorrhea. So if you know that the mom is negative, why are you treating for that? Okay, but then we have to go further. So if a mom was positive for chlamydia or gonorrhea, yes, an antibiotic would be necessary to treat that if we're having a rampant case or if baby went through the birth canal. However, it's IV antibiotics. Topical would be nothing. So let me give you a better image on something that we've all experienced. Let's say you cut yourself while working in the yard and it started festering, right? It started getting green and pussy and it was weepy, you know, oozing gunk. Would you put Neosporin on top of it and call it a day?
Not me.
No, you'd probably go to the doctor, right? Because it would need to be irrigated, cleaned, possibly sutured, and you'd need to do some things to take care of that wound. Maybe even pack it with antibiotics, and you'd probably need to take some. Now, I would personally treat that with herbal antibiotics, not pharmaceutical, but that's just me, and everybody can pick their own comfortability on that. But if a baby was truly exposed to that sexually transmitted disease, you would need to be intravenous or oral, right? It would not be topical. Okay, so then the other thing is that when you put the goop on their eyes, they can't see. So babies can't find the breast when they can't use their eyes in conjunction with their nose and mouth to find the breast and latch on. So now we're affecting breastfeeding. Oh, geez, now what to get to introduce? Formula, which is going to completely wipe out their gut and just destroy their gut barrier, which is going to affect their brain barrier, because what you do to your gut is what you're doing to your brain. They are connected. While they are separate organs, they are connected on a homeostasis level, right? Either negatively or positively. Okay, and then the stuff that goes in the thighs is, we'll just call all of them the same thing so we don't get flagged. And that is, no, I don't need those. So hepatitis is, there's a couple different kinds, but it really originates from either prostitution or IV drug use. Now, I have never personally met a baby that's a prostitute or doing IV drugs. Have you?
Never.
Right. So since we're not dealing with that, and because that injection has been proven repetitively to not be successful in general, but definitely not going to last long term. So if you're worried about what my 14-year-old is doing, first of all, don't, because I would be a good parent, and so I wouldn't have a 14-year-old that's doing naughty things. But secondly, it won't last that long anyway, even if it was effective, which they're usually not.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up as a little side note. No, I've never met any infant prostitutes, but I've sure seen a whole lot of them in this federal government.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
For sure.
I was going to go to a very, very, very dark place, but maybe I'll save that for the end, if at all.
Okay.
And it just to kind of whet your beak for what I may potentially ask is your thoughts regarding some of this stuff and babies and the Epstein thing. But
I
that,
had a feeling you were going there.
yeah, I'll save that for later because
Okay.
there's some really dark stuff there, and I figured you would probably have an opinion on some of that. But
Shoot in
here
the
we
back of the
are.
head.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Wood chipper, feet first. I'm all with that. I'm with every bit of that. But
Great. Make public executions great again.
that's what I'm talking. See, I like the way you roll. We're going to get along great. Um, I've been talking a lot about some things that I think a number of people don't necessarily want to hear because they want to go on and believe that everything's just going to go the way it was. But folks, at the top of this program, I just gave you one statistical thing. Now, Jessica, you did say, yeah, it may take a year, but hey, y'all remember that fuel is done on a world market. I mean,
Right.
that could change. People are already struggling to put bread on the table. So we could potentially, I'm not saying this is going to happen, folks, but in the worst case scenario, if this thing escalates, if it keeps escalating, we may see our version of a Mad Max scenario in here. So that's why I want to talk about some of these topics. So let's just say we do hit that sooner rather than later. At this point, I think it's starting to become an inevitability with the ways we see things unfolding right now. But why are women and children statistically the most vulnerable populations when systems do collapse? And we've seen a lot of them.
Yeah, so you can take any conflict or any natural disaster that's ever taken place in either recent history or past, and you can look at just doing some basic internet research, we'll call it that, and you can look at what's happened to women and children. We are a commodity, right? Women bring forth life. Also, rape and sexual assault skyrockets after any type of natural disaster, civil unrest, war, that type of thing. And then you have to top it off with trafficking, right? So women and children are prime candidates when the system is disrupted. That means I have men that are focusing on other things because that's the problem, right? That's the most important threat at that moment. So the men are all focused on a problem, but that's when not so great situations come in and under the guise of help, right? It's always under the guise of help. Here, let me help you with this. Here, let me give you this. And then that's when women and children are going to be marginalized, trafficked, assaulted, injured, harmed in some way.
Now, in those, we got a number of survival communities out there. A lot of them, almost certainly listen to this show, and I'm aware of a number of others out there. So are there any critical medical scenarios involving women that a lot of these communities are unprepared for?
Yeah, so everything from how do you handle a post-assault and rape case? How do you take care of menses? How do you take care of a cycle? How do you take care of normal infections? Women are at some point during their life going to experience one or all of these: a yeast infection, bacterial vaginosis, a UTI. You have a nice lady in your life. I'm sure your wife has experienced that at some point in her life. And you need to be able to know how to take care of those things. A lot of people are like, I don't need to take your class because I don't need to learn that birthy stuff. Well, it's not just that. That's a very small part of the whole class. We're talking about everything, and we're going through the first year after birth. So that's postpartum hemorrhage. That's going to be postpartum depression. That's going to be breastfeeding, infant care. What does a normal infant look like? Most people don't know what normal functions of an infant are because they rely on a doctor or a nurse to do a head-to-toe exam on them and say, yep, your kid looks fine. But you talked about how fearful you were after you had your son. So then what happened when 24 hours went by and they kicked you out of the hospital and said, have a great life, see you later? You're locking up to the kid every 2 seconds with 2 fingers by its nose going, are you breathing? Are you breathing? Oh, it's still breathing. Okay, we haven't killed it yet. Okay, awesome. Are you breathing? Yeah, I want to take all of that away and show you what a normal baby looks like. How does it function? What should I be worried about? When do I actually need definitive care? And what are some things I can take care of at home?
You know, a lot of these, I'm often invited to speak or be a part of a lot of these survival or, well, how do I say it? It could be sometimes a fusion of a number of things
Sure.
when it comes to a lot of these festivals, but there's always somebody out there who does a tourniquet and trauma kit kind of thing. How come that's
Yeah.
not enough in the real world?
Um, while I truly believe that those are valuable skills to have, um, it would be equivalent to you only teaching me how to plant blueberries.
Ah, makes sense.
I love blueberries just like everybody else does, but I can't live off of a blueberry. I'm not going to get very far, right? If you were going to teach me how to garden, you would teach me how to set up my soil. You would teach me how to pick the right foliage and the right plants and the right companion crops for my area, right? I live in Texas. You live in the Carolinas. Like we're in different zones, so it wouldn't be the same. So while again, a tourniquet, a hemostatic agent, so it's a blood clotting agent, or a chest seal, those are very sexy skills and techniques. But I'm going to tell you, I mean, I've been a paramedic for a really long time. I worked in a major metropolitan city, where people shoot and stab each other all the time. And I've put a tourniquet on somebody about two hands worth of times, maybe a couple toes. Right. So not every bleed that's happening on the body deserves a tourniquet. Sometimes the pressure dressing will be just fine. I know tourniquets are sexy, and I know that they are low entry level medical device items to buy. Right, you're somewhere between $25 and $35 of an entry, right, to buy that. And I get that. I understand that that's kind of a okay, I took care of that. But that's not how we should be prepping, right? Like if all I'm focused on is okay, I set up the garden, I'll walk away and leave it. That's not how we garden, right? I have to pull weeds, maybe I have to add more supplemental items to the soil. Maybe I need to rotate crops. Maybe I need to do different irrigation techniques. And that's what we need to be thinking about with medicine, and being prepared as a human being on this planet who belongs to a family, a neighborhood, and a community. I need to know how to take care of myself, my neighbor, and then my community. And I need to be able to provide skills. And so if medicine is something that you're taking on in one of those roles, you should be able to be multifaceted, and just knowing how and when to use a tourniquet is not medical preparedness. It's just not.
Well, it sounds to me, I mean, if things were to go, well, okay, let's just say things go to the worst place possible. Okay.
Okay.
Let's say the Strait of Hormuz stays shut down, and let's say we're not
Okay.
getting our shipments from China. Most of our pharmaceuticals do come from China.
That is
And
true.
I heard you say a number of things that made me think that, oh, wait, she's got some alternatives out there. I mean, what would those be if we don't have ships coming in from China every other day?
Right. So, while I do talk about the pharmaceutical options that are available in my class, I primarily focus on herbal medicine because it's accessible to everyone. And even if you do not understand the foundational building blocks of herbal medicine, even if that's just not your thing, I can point you in the right direction of where to get these items from reputable sources. So let's say I truly love making medicine. I enjoy. There's 5 liters of vodka in my kitchen right now. Am I going to drink that? No, I'm steeping herbs. Okay, that I truly love doing that. It's very fun for me. I feel like I'm preparing to take care of my family should they need that. I know I always like to have extra because I can give it to the neighbor, or exchange something, do a barter system with somebody. But even if you don't feel like doing that, that's not your calling, which is totally fine. You don't have to be called to everything. I'm going to point you in the right direction from reputable companies who I truly believe in, and I purchase their things and I give them to my own family. I'm not ever going to teach somebody how to do something that I have not done myself or done to a family member. I'm just not, because I don't trust it then. So these are skills that you can pass down, and you walk out with fun things. Like you go home with a recipe book of my recipes on how to make these things if you truly want to, if that's your calling. But being able to know what to do with a clove of garlic and how to treat a yeast infection with that's kind of cool.
Wow, that is really cool. I'm glad you're covering both sides of the fence there, because we're getting into precarious territory. I mean, right now, another news report is that China has basically surrounded Taiwan with another. So, I mean, it looks like that all the things that we count on every day in a Western society has the potential of not happening. I mean, whether it's car tires, whether it's our medical, if you're on some pharmaceutical, it's coming from China. So I wouldn't count on that. You better be thinking about some alternatives in a big, big way. Jessica, as we come to the close here, as we're getting closer, I got to ask somebody like you, and I think it'll be cathartic for me just asking. I'm going to go a little bit dark here.
Okay.
Now, as someone,
I'm bracing myself.
Yeah, as someone, and like I said, there's a catharsis for me in asking it, because by and large, I can't even tell you the number of people I've talked to as of late that really couldn't care less about what's been revealed in these Epstein files, the diabolical things that they're doing to babies and all these children that come up missing every year. Now, having somebody on the program like yourself, who obviously has a serious love and affinity for women and babies, I just got to know, I mean, how has any of that affected you, and what are your thoughts on it? I think you kind of said it a moment ago, but also, do you have an opinion on why we have this level of I don't know if you're seeing it, but I see a level of apathy that was undreamed of my whole life. Nobody cares, despite this happening to the most vulnerable. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Like personal friends?
Yeah, I mean, people that just don't. It's like it barely registers. Oh, that's awful. Can you pass the mashed potatoes now? I mean,
I laughed out of uncomfortable. It's not because it was funny. Okay, so that's insanity to me. I deeply care about what's going on, and I've had to deal with my own grief and my own feelings with that. I'm a millennial, those dreaded millennials. So that means my entire growing up years was dictated by these monsters. Everything I wore, everything I listened to, everything I ate, every movie I went to, every album that was released was all came from all of these monsters, right? And so I've kind of had to go back and go, did I really want to buy that type of outfit and wear it, or was I told to wear that thing? That's been hard for me, kind of looking back at my childhood. But the other part of that is, I don't know that I want to associate with someone that isn't deeply affected by what's in those files. That I'm having to compute that, Billy. It's not registering. That's disturbing. And everyone that has been implicated and everybody that will really needs to just like seriously bring back public hangings.
I like the way you roll. I like the way you roll. No,
and it's not because, to clarify, because someone's going to be like, why did you say that? Well, just to clarify that, it's not because I believe that the public should witness that, because that's a gruesome and horrible way to die. It's because I want people to remember that there is good and evil. And because we are human and we are fallen and broken and susceptible to evil influence, it is important for us to remember that there is a battle between good and evil. And that I believe all life is important at every stage, from conception to grave. All life is valuable. All life has importance. And we should honor all of that. But when you take someone else's innocence away, when you take somebody's physical bodily autonomy away from them, you have forfeited your rights here on this earth. And so you no longer get to be around us. And I didn't make the rules, God did. So if you have a problem with them, you can take them up with him, not me. I am just a messenger.
Well, I like it. I like the message you're breaking out there because it puts joy in my heart. And don't be hard on yourself because I know so many people come down on millennials, but honestly, the only people that I've seen that I've had interactions with, and I've had a number of them as of late, that have been absolutely indifferent in regards to all of this have been my generation, Generation X, and the biggest culprits out there, minus the ones that are listening to this podcast. I mean, get a baby boomer to care about any of the stuff that's going on right now. Like I said, I can't say the whole generation.
I know.
But I would say 90% of the baby boomers I've come across with over the last, are absolutely indifferent either with the things that are going on in this world and couldn't care less about the Epstein client list. So that's why I'm saying I don't think you ought to be tough on your generation.
I think we have to step back and look at what each generation was experiencing. This topic the topic between the generation debacles, right? The fights between the generations came up in another podcast I was on. And we have to think about what was going on during the baby boomer time. So their parents were in or were deeply affected by World War II. And they're all coming back and they're wanting to get back to a world that is normal. Well, what we've learned in our time on this planet is you can never go back to what was before. It's gone. It's over. It doesn't exist anymore. So they're coming back from war and they're trying desperately to create families and go back to what is normal, what they remember as normal. And I'm strongly telling you, I'm really hammering in on how important birth is because it truly is important. It is a crossover from the spiritual world to the physical world. And women were put to sleep with medications we don't really use anymore. It was called twilight sleep. So they were physically numbed, but they were mentally there. And they were thrown up in stirrups. They were cut in episiotomy all the way to their anus. Forceps were shoved inside of them and they ripped babies out. Then they knocked the mom out, sutured her up and put a baby in a nursery for 3 to 4 days and left mom in a room to heal in an unconscious, unaware state. So she was separated from her baby. So you want to know why the baby boomers are so disconnected? Why we tell them things and go, did you see what's happening over here? And they have a flat affect. They have no ability to communicate. And when you argue with them, they argue like they're still in 4th grade.
Yeah.
It's because they never bonded with their parents. They were separated from them and they were left to cry in a nursery. So we have an entire generation that has no idea how to bond, has no idea how to connect with another human. They don't know how to have an argument, a debate, because they have been told, don't feel, don't touch, don't look, don't do anything. Just produce. So while it's very frustrating, and trust me, it drives me nuts on a daily basis, and I do get angry and I lose my cool sometimes, and I say things I shouldn't say to boomers, and I'm working on that, okay? But we have to look at the why behind that, and it's because they were completely emotionally, physically, spiritually neglected.
I think that's a very interesting, I never heard that kind of take on it because I've had this conversation with a number of others as of late. I guess I offer less quarter because this is the same generation that lived through the lies of Vietnam. They lived through the Kennedy assassination. They lived through the lies of, and it's funny how you can be a JFK assassination aficionado, but you won't even take, even though Jim Mars, the great Jim Mars, said there probably exists at least, what did he say, 50 to 100 times more evidence that 9/11 was an inside job than there was in the Kennedy assassination. But those same boomers who now recognize the Kennedy assassination but couldn't care less about it or the consequences of it, they can't see anything regarding anything else. No, I've never heard it put the way you put it, but I would also say that, you know what, when you've lived through things that have been proven to be lies, like the Kennedy assassination, like Vietnam, and where all these things led, you should get a little bit smarter. Now, for the chat out there, there's a number of people that are upset, I think, with what I'm saying here. Remember, I did preface what I said. That it's not all boomers. Some of the most
No, it's
consequential
not.
people out there that are putting out incredible information
Yeah.
are, in fact, from that boomer generation. I'm just saying 90%. I found myself in a room almost entirely of boomers just last Saturday. And it was the most confused bunch I've ever seen in my life regarding the realities in this world that are not difficult to prove.
Right.
And you can't argue with them, just as you were saying a moment ago, Jessica. You can't argue with them. I don't want to make this into a generational battle.
No.
I'm just wondering why it is. These are some of the people that, you know, when you say, hey, look what's happening in the Middle East. I don't care less. It was like my buddy Steve wrote in here a minute ago that his siblings, Steve is a boomer, he said all of his siblings, if it ain't about the 401k, they just don't care. And
because they were programmed to buy into, get good grades, graduate, buy a house at 20, get married, have 4 kids, and then you retire because you get a pension. That ended in 65. We don't have those things. We don't have that anymore. And so we also have more technology today than they did growing up. And so that propaganda was imprinted with cement. You and I have the internet, and we have a whole bunch of other things. And it's really hard. It's a cult, right? Propaganda is a cult. It gets into your brain. It uses emotion and a bunch of other techniques to really cement itself inside of you. The same could be said with pockets of communities in other generations as well. I mean, there are plenty. We could use this exact same conversation and apply it to absolutely any generation. There's pockets of the Gen Z generation that's being called Zoomers because they have the same type of mentality. So yeah, I mean, we could spend hours talking about this. I in no way, shape, or form hate boomers. You don't hate them either. We're not talking negatively. We're just looking at the big picture and how does this affect our society. And I'm saying we really need to look at what they went through and what they survived and why they're responding the way they're responding. And I say that it has a lot to do with propaganda. It has a lot to do with how they were born and how they were unable to connect with their parents. And that has ramifications. The catchphrases right now is attachment theory. Have you heard about this?
Oh,
where
yeah.
You're either you're successfully can attach to people. You're an avoidant, right? You're anxious attacher. That is that's very real, and it has everything to do with how you connected with your parents. And that is why I'm saying birth is so important, because when we don't have a normal physiological birth that is absent of fear and has the right people around you and the right emotions, it will negatively affect that child for the rest of their life. I mean, you can look at the difference between attachment with C-section babies versus vaginal birth that are physiological birth babies. They have completely different psychological makeup, and this is lifelong. Like we have lifelong consequences because of this.
Wow, that's you're dropping, man. Oh my goodness. Now you just created another 30 questions I got, but we don't have time right now. Jessica, one more time, tell everybody where they can find you. I mean, as far as your class and where they can go to your website to find out more about you.
combatmidwife.com. I'm on all the social medias. You can hang out with me wherever. I will answer your question. Email me, whatever you want to do, and get your butt to class, because I want to be able to teach you how to take care of your family, your neighbor, and your community. And I can do that.
And one more time, are they at your website? Are they going to find out the classes you do have in person, or do you?
Yep. So everything is on my website. You'll be able to jump into a class, pay right there. I even have payment plans to make it easy for you and your family. And we've got Tennessee on June 13th, and we've got Texas, which is June 20th. I have a New Hampshire class coming up at the end of May. And all of the tickets are available online. Join my newsletter because I tell you exactly what to put in your preps every week. You have a new theme every month, and I tell you what to put in your preps and take care of your family. Let's do this, man. We don't need the government. We don't need their help. We can do this. Let's create our own community. Come join me and the Combat Midwife Army. I want to have you there.
That's what I'm talking about, folks. I mean, people are saying in the chat, man, you got to bring her back. Ain't that the truth? Because I'm just now, there's so many other things that I could get into with Jessica, and we will the next time we have her on. All right, y'all. Hopefully this was a blessing to you. Until next time, stay alert, stay alive.
Let the ideas unfold. I'm moving with the truth. Feeling that just who's got the answers? All we need to do, listen to the earth, they got us through. Seasons change, watch the world spin. From the smallest sprout to harmony begin. In the cycle of life, where the magic's alive.